Being in control of the pace of the game is important, and that's why I'm running this bombardment-based Orc list at the Squarebase GT on the 27th of April. This list is based on a couple of successful lists that have won events in Sweden. A list by Tim Norden, who won the first Old World GT in Sweden, and another list by Marcus Osling, who won the Fantasia Fanatics. This is my own take on the list. It has a couple of changes. There are a couple of things that are different. Whether or not it's better, I'm very interested to see how it plays at a competitive level. The list has 4 characters, spending most of its points into the character slot. This is where you could maybe make an argument that I've been inefficient with my choices. However, I think the combination of double caster and support pieces is going to be very useful. So starting off with the Orc Weirdnob, we have got, he's on the back of a Wyvern, fairly tough, 9-inch move, T6, 7 wounds, it's got a 5-up armor save from the Armored Hide and a 5-up ward save from the Talisman of Protection. It is equipped with a Ruby Ringaroon, a Idol of Gork, and also a Talisman of Protection, obviously, to give it that ward save. The main tech here is the Idol of Gork gives you plus 3-inch range to your spells, and it also lets you reroll 1 spell a turn. Not 1 failed spell, not, the recent FAQ changing it so that you can't reroll miscasts if the wording on your magic item or your roll is reroll 1 failed spell, because a miscast is not a failed spell. But you get to reroll a spell, so if you fail to cast it, or if you roll a double 1, or if you just feel like you need a higher cast against some aggressive dispelling, you've got the option there. Obviously, with the changes to the FAQ, you can't reroll the cast on the Ruby Ringaroon and you don't get the additional range, but that's fine. It's a cheap item. It's just there to sort of add more punch to your mobile artillery caster. So, this is the reason that this model's on a Wyvern, is you want to be using it quite aggressively. You don't want to be running up into the lines, but playing around the skirmish, around the flanks, you want to be trying to get angles because of the Gaze of Gork. So normally it's a 5d6 range line spell. In this case, it's 5d6 plus 3, giving it a little bit more reliability. 18-inch range. The reason that I'm going with this is, A, it is a magic missile that you can swap into. Those are fairly rare, while also having, the ability to roll a magic missile, as it's part of the lore of, I believe, Gork, the Orc-specific casting lore there. Every model hit takes a Strength 5 AP3 hit. This is obviously incredibly strong. If you can get into the flank of a unit of Blood Knights, for example, you could, in theory, wipe the whole squad fairly comfortably, especially with the rest of your casting. You've also got, going with the Lore of Elementalism. Unfortunately, we don't have the ability to take the Lore Familiar on this model. So you're rolling your spells. You've got a 66% chance to get to get Wind Blast and Plague of Rust. It's not the end of the world if you only get one of the two. It's very unlikely that you don't get either of the two. I believe it's a 1 in 6 chance that you'd not get either. If that is the case, you can pivot into using your model as a more aggressive melee model. There is a Flaming Sword within the War lore, and then there is, the Elementalism War. And there is also the Brainburster signature spell that you can change into if you want to go for a couple of melee spells. I don't see myself doing this. I think if I get very unlucky and I don't roll either of those spells, I'm probably still going to be just using a couple of magic missiles. However, Elementalism, great lore. Couple of utility spells in there as well. There's a Vortex, there's an Invuln that you can put on your units because you want to be using them defensively. But in this case, you're trying to pump as much damage as possible. And Wind Blast, 18-inch range with the extra 3 inches from Idol of Gork. D3 plus 3, Strength 5, AP1 hits. Obviously a strong magic missile. Making your unit, the enemy unit give ground as well, is quite nice. Just gives you a little bit more positional play. And Plague of Rust. This is incredible. I'm hoping to roll this every game. If I don't, I am going to be quite upset. It reduces the enemy unit's armor save by 2. I think technically, rules as written, it reduces their ward and regen by 2 as well. I will not be playing it like that. I'm assuming that the Squarebase GT would not be playing it like that. I think I'm not sure anyone's actually going to be arguing the case for that interpretation of the rule. So back to the rest of the list. There's also a second caster. Moving on to the Oddnob, this is the defensive caster. So it's got the lore familiar, so I can pick my spells. Very important in this lore, I think, because there are some incredible spells, but also some that are a little underwhelming. I've also gone for the magic carpet, giving this model 8-inch fly. Not able to join a unit, doesn't matter so much. Just going to stand it by some infantry so they can't be targeted out. First of all, Itchy Nuisance. This is the signature spell from the Lore of Mork. It is a 15-inch range hex, and the unit that you cast it on gets D3 toughness and initiative until your next turn. This is incredible. You can use this offensively. If your opponent's got a dragon and you want to try and punk it with a load of fanatics, this is a great way to do it. If you get that 3, drop it down to, toughness 3, or even just down to toughness 4, those fanatics will do an absolute number on it. Minus initiative is fantastic as well. It does mean that if you're charging with Great Weapon Black Orcs, you're very likely to get the first strike there, even if you're playing into something tricksy like elves, which is quite nice. Also, the other main reason to go for this lore is, the main reason to go for Illusion is Miasmic Mirage. Miasmic Mirage is minus 2 inches to the move. It's a hex enemy unit, and the target unit cannot march or charge. So this army doesn't have its own big beta dragon, but it does have the tools to deal with big beta dragons, which I'm expecting to be a large part of the meta, even with the recent changes to things like the Bedazzling Helm. Another spell to note here is the Column of Crystal. It's only a 9-inch range, but it's 5-inch line of sight blocking impassable terrain. Really strong. It's just nice to be able to put something down to prevent your opponent from being able to move their models or to charge you, give you another layer of defense. Not being able to see things as well is very nice. All right, third character. We're back to we're now out of the casters. We're on to the Black Orc Big Boss on the Black Orc Chariot. This is one that I'm very personally pleased with. It is a fairly tanky model. It's a 7-inch move model, T5, 6 wounds, 3 armor save. I haven't gone for any defensive items on it. I don't think it's super worth the points to do so. Maybe I'll change my mind, but I'm not planning on using this super aggressively. I'm more planning on using it as a support piece. Speaking of support, it has first charge, so you'll be disrupting your enemy's ranks. You'll be removing their rank bonus for the first turn. It has 4 static combat res. Now, that is quite good. The main issue with units, characters on chariots or on ridden monsters is that the unit champion's just going to challenge you out, and then you're probably going to lose on combat resolution. So you get 4 static combat res here, 1 for close order, 1 for the standard. Black Orc chariots can just have a standard, 1 for the battle standard bearer, and 1 for the war banner. This is still fairly cheap, comes in at about 270 points, 275, something along those lines, and it gives you effectively a near guaranteed win. If you charge into an enemy unit, they challenge you out, you're going to be doing the 4 static combat res, you're probably going to be maxing out the overkill, you're setting up, around 10 combat resolution, they're going to be having banner, no ranks, no wounds. You're going to hopefully crush that unit. They may end up just falling back in good order. That's still a victory. If they do that, you can follow up, fight into them again with your masses of weapons and your impact hits. So, what else do you get? Impact hits, obviously. Being a heavy chariot, you get D6 plus 1, strength 5, AP 2 impact hits. This is good into pretty much every profile. It's just a solid set of hits. 8 great weapon attacks. That is 4 from the champion and then 4 from the 2 Black Orc models on the side there as well. Also got Choppers and War. Choppers, an incredible Orc rule. If you're playing Orcs, you probably know about it already. But if you don't, you get plus 1 AP and reroll 1s to wound if you charge for the first round of combat. Very reliable, especially if you're hitting with a lot of strength 6 attacks. If you're wounding models on 2s and you're rerolling 1s, almost all of those are going to convert. Realistically, you're not dropping very many. War is quite nice as well. It's a static plus 1 combat res, once per game buff, sorry. But getting that extra point of combat res can be useful. Also, you reroll, I believe it's 1s to hit in combat as well, which is just, again, solid reliability boost. Your weapon skill 4 in the Black Orcs, higher on the Big Boss, but it's still nice to have that efficiency boost there if you're hitting on 3s or 4s. Finally, there's a Night Goblin Big Boss. I haven't done a slide for this. It's only in here to unlock Night Goblins. You can only take a Night Goblin unit for each Night Goblin character you have. So I've got a Big Boss here to make it a legal list. Then onto the Night Goblins. Again, I haven't specifically picked these out. These are, if you've been playing at all, competitively or playing against friends with Orcs and Goblins, chances are you've seen these. They are very good. I've gone for a brick of 29, which the character sits in. 6x5 brick. Spears, shields, light armor, netters on a 2+. You're -1 strength. On a 1, they're -1 strength, but that's fine. They weren't killing anything anyway. The real source here is the 3 fanatics in them. So given that I'm planning on playing this list defensively, what I'll be doing is I'll be sitting back, and when my opponents, on the turn they're planning to charge, put the fanatics in front of my squads. They'll charge through the fanatics. I then get to move the fanatics in the random movement phase, so I can hit each unit that hits me, that charges into me twice, which is quite a deterrent for especially elite armies. For those who aren't in the know, fanatics do D6 auto hits when they move through or a unit moves through them at strength 5 AP 3, so they kill most things. Also, unit of 20 Night Goblins there with short bows. Again, this is just a cheap unit. Potentially a little bit of missile fire. You can either deploy them in marching column and move them up the board, or you can just sit them back and use them to protect a flank with the fanatics there. Then I have got Orc mobs. 15 models here. I've gone with the boss, the only leadership, the only character upgrade. They're not, they're 4-inch move, T4, 5 up save, -1 hit range because they're a skirmish unit. That's fine. I've gone for big uns to give them that extra strength in combat. The main reason that I'm taking them is against armies that can get around the flanks, that can deal with my war machines. They are here to skirmish around them and protect them. I've got a 360-degree line of sight, so I can charge in any direction, meaning that you can't do shenanigans where you get behind me, out of my line of sight, and stop me from doing anything. They're, pretty reasonable in combat. Strength 4, AP 1, reroll 1 to wound on the charge. It's not bad. It'll pick up cheap skirmishing units pretty effectively. If your opponent's sending warhounds to deal with your war machines, you can just deal with their warhounds. And they also have moderate shooting. They've got warbows, 15 shots with those. It's not bad. It's quite a nice cheap unit to round out my core. Other than that, speaking of orcs, there are the Black Orcs. So Black Orcs, again, 4-inch move, so pretty moderate there. T4, and they've got a 3-up save. This is because of the mob rule. So effectively, the way that the mob rule works is you can be equipped with different items. In this case, what I've done is I've gone with 16 great weapons. So every model has a great weapon. If I want to just crush something on the charge, I absolutely can. But I've also gone for 8 shields. So every other model has a shield. As long as half or more of the models that you're fighting with, half or more of the models in the unit have the shield, you get that +1 to your save. So against shooting, they always get the +1. In the front rank, if I have 4 of those models using the shield, hand weapon and shield, then I can get the save bonus from it, while the rest of them use the great weapons, and they're still at a 3-up save as well. Quite a nice little chopper unit, arrayed in a 2x8. Mostly there is a counter charge, charge deterrent. I want my artillery to do the bulk of the heavy lifting. But yeah, 17 attacks, weapon skill, 4 great weapons with reroll 1s to wound and an extra pip of AP. They will cleave through most things that I come across, I think. And also, finally, we have the theming of the list, the artillery. There are 2 bolt throwers. They're cheap. They're only ballistic skill 3, but that's fine. There's 2 of them. On average, 1 of them will hit, as long as you're within half range, which with their 48-inch range is probably going to happen. Strength 6, AP 3, multiple wounds 2. These are in mostly to help me deal with large monsters, but if they do go into, cavalry or elite infantry, I'm not upset about that at all. Potentially piercing ranks. If my opponent's running zombies in a hilariously long column, maybe I'll kill 6 zombies, who can say? Just a nice, cheap, efficient shooting unit there. Then there's 2 Doom Divers as well. So Doom Divers are more expensive than normal stone throwers at 95 points, but they're more accurate. So after you've adjusted on a scatter, assuming you can see the opponent, you reduce an additional D3 in any direction as the Doom Diver flaps its wings in the direction that you want to adjust it. This means that potentially, depending on how your opponent's deployed and how you scatter, you might scatter off the unit that you want to shoot, but you manage to scatter onto something else. This is obviously fairly solid. The main reason, again, that they're in here is they are an incredible unit for dealing with dragons, especially if you've managed to cast, say, Plague of Rust on them. you can be stripping that armor save entirely away. The single model that's under the central hull takes an automatic hit, strength 8, AP 3, and it's D3 plus 1 damage, which is very strong. Lots of things, a chariot has 4 wounds, for example. Dragons are kind of the exception. They're up there at sort of the 8 to 10 wound bracket, but it's enough to, while not consistently kill the dragon, I have the tools to keep them away with the illusion caster. But it also hopefully makes my opponent deploy more conservatively, maybe put them behind a hill, so it's harder for me to hit them. If my opponent's not running large monsters, they're also fairly solid at just dealing with infantry, especially elite infantry with a smaller template size, but it's a strength 4 AP 1 hit if they're under the base, or a risk to be hit if they're partially under the base. Thank you for watching. It has been the first of the list tech videos. I will be doing more of these going forwards, and if there's any lists that you think are particularly interesting, if there are any lists that have won events that you would like me to have a look at, do give me a shout, drop them in the comments, shoot me a message on here, whatever works, and I'll be back with a video as to how I did at the Squarebase GT on Monday.